Live on the internet, we are again.
Well,
we're making a habit of this, Ronnie, aren't we?
We're just about live, aren't we, Roger? At our age, we're kind of clinging. We're sort of clinging on to live, aren't we? Really,
Well, I suppose you're allowed at your age to make an ageist joke. I suppose
I can. Yeah, I'm allowed.
Yeah, youngsters like me and Stacey can't. So.
I can make an ageist joke about myself.
So,
I'm older than you.
To number 5 of this series, folks.
The never-ending series.
Yeah, the never-ending series.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
So, Ronnie, I hope you've got some funny stories for this 5th one.
I have, yeah, but I understand that you've got a couple of funny stories, Roger. So, do you want to tell your funny stories first, or how do we want to do it with the order of funny stories?
No, I'll just slot in.
You'll slot in
the intermission
in between.
You carry on.
Right. Okay. Well, the year is now. Oh, blimey, no, I can't. I think it must be because I got. This is my 3rd prison sentence, and I got put in prison on my 3rd. Prison sentence in 1986. I got arrested and charged with various conspiracies, and then we got put on trial, and this was including Roger. He was in the trial, and quite a lot of other people at Sheffield Crown Court. I got sentenced to 10 years. Roger got sentenced to 4 years. Roger went on the run, and then he was eventually captured and put in jail. I kind of. We started off in Hull, and then we got moved to Leeds prison, and then I was in Leeds prison, and I was only there sort of kind of temporarily, because what happened, it's what they call a local prison, so most prisoners there end up getting moved to other prisons. And I was really quite.
That means like a Victorian prison.
It's an old Victorian.
Like the ones that people would see. If you ever watch Porridge, it looks like that, doesn't it?
It's like Porridge, yeah, with the landings, and we had a bucket to go toilet in and stuff. You know, it used to be terrible if someone had to shit in the bucket. That was awful. That was like really bad, because you only got to empty it like. Probably about 3 times a day or something, you know, out of 24 hours. That wasn't good. They weren't very popular. Anyway, so and I wanted to kind of get out of Leeds, really, because my sister came to see me on a visit, and she sort of said, "Oh, there's Sammy. Hello, Sammy." And she said, "Oh my God," she said, "You're talking just like a northerner." She said, "You're talking like a northerner." I said, "You know, no, I'm not Ibar Gumlas, no, I'm not, you know." And I was, because of course, being in prison in Leeds, you're in prison with all these terrible Yorkshire people, you know, and so
watch it.
Is that Yorkshire? That's probably Yorkshireist, isn't it? That is, and I end up talking with them and like, you know, how's our mum and all that. I was doing that, and my sister was absolutely shocked. So I thought, I've got to get to a prison like further down south, you see. So anyway, I ended up getting somebody's wrecking Tracy's house. I ended up getting moved to a prison called Long Lartin, which is down in Worcestershire, near Evesham, and I tell you, Yorkshireist, yeah. So and there was a load of London gangsters there, such that kind of I started, you know, getting back my old accent when I was in Long Lartin. But it was my first job there was I got put in a workshop, and it was kind of operating some machine to make something. You know, they use, you know, prisoners are used as cheap labour, and then they sell the stuff. It's money for the government. And we all sat round.
Did you ever do the mailbags? Did you do the stereotypical?
Yeah, I did the mailbags. Yeah, I did the mailbags. on a previous sentence, yeah, I have actually sewn mailbags. See, and
Yeah,
sewn
me
them,
too. I was
sewn them
really
by hand.
I was totally useless at it. Yeah,
And me, yeah, all the letters be falling out of them. Yeah, I sold the mailbags. Oh yeah, it's not a kind of, it's not a myth. It is true that I do sew mailbags. But anyway, we'd all sat round kind of at this break, and we were talking about what we were in for. You see, how long we got and everything. And one bloke said, "Oh, I got 18 years. 18 years." It's this London bloke. And I said, "Oh, what did you do? What did you do?" He said, "Oh, I went across the pavement. Went across the pavement." And I said, "Blimey!" I said, "That's that's a long time for a parking offence." But what it was, it's their slang for bank robbery. That's what they say, because you kind of go across the pavement, you see, to do a bank robbery, and that's what that was. And I kind of thought, well, in Holland, if someone does a bank robbery in Holland, do they go across the cycle track? You know. Anyway, so talking about robbers, really, I suppose my best mate in Long Lartin was a guy called Alan Hale. Alan Hale was really quite famous because he'd been involved in this notorious gang of bank robbers in South Africa called the Stander Gang. And there's actually a film about them called Stander, which Alan later said isn't all that accurate, but there was a film made about them. And basically, Stander, this guy Andre Stander, was an ex-police officer. He was an ex-police officer. He turned to robbery, and so he's very good at robbery because he knew how the police operated. You see, so what they used to do. They didn't used to go charging the banks with guns and that. They go in very, very quietly and speak very quietly to the cashiers. We've got guns and that, and get all the money and come out. Once there was a policeman watching the bank, and they went in and did a robbery and come out, and the police officer watching the bank never even knew because they'd done it so quietly. But anyway, he told me one funny story. There was a really, really horrible police chief over in South Africa, and because they have these great big canes over there to hit people with. And anyway, he told me they captured this guy. They captured this police chief, and they took him in the garage. They tied him to a car, and they got his cane. They caned him, serve him right for all the people that he'd done it to. This police guy. But Alan was a vegetarian. He was like very fond of animals. He had a budgie in that prison. In a lot of long-term prisons, prisoners are allowed to have budgies and canaries and animals like that. And it's really quite controversial because I think if they get in a bad temper and that, they can kind of take it out on these birds. It's not something I really agree with, that they should be allowed to have them. And there were some that got injured, and I used to mend their wings. They quite often would get broken wings. They'd be flying around in a little, the small area of a cell and bang into things. And I kind of learned how to mend their wings, wrap bandage around and kind of get them right. And Alan rescued one. There was this bloke who weren't treating a budgie very well, and Alan rescued the budgie off him, and looked after the budgie. But there was another guy in a cell just down from me, and he was called Raymond. And Raymond was an air conditioning engineer, and he got sent to South America by his company to do some air conditioning at a factory in Colombia. And this bloke in Colombia, he was from Belgium, Raymond was. And this guy approached him and said, "Oh, my friend from Belgium's just been over and he's gone back to Belgium. He's left his suitcase. So when you go back to Belgium, could you take the suitcase?" Say, and Alan and Raymond said, "Yeah." And of course, this suitcase was like full of cocaine. He got stopped at Heathrow Airport, searched, and they found all this cocaine. He ended up getting 10 years. But I don't think he was guilty. He was never a drug smuggler. This guy. He was so straight laced. But he was absolutely terrified of spiders. Absolutely terrified of spiders. And I'd walk past his cell, and he'd shout me, "Oh, Ronnie, help me, Ronnie!" And I'd go in there, and he'd be stood up on the bed, and there'd be a spider on the floor, and I'd have to get the spider, put the spider out the window. Sometimes I'd take the spider in my own cell, and it was like always got him. Anyway, one time it was a tea time, and what we'd do is we'd go and get our food from like the servery and bring it back to the cell. And this one tea time, we had salad, you see, so all went back, eat the salad in the cell. We got locked up for an hour to eat our tea, you see, and after the hour we got unlocked. And I was walking past his cell and he said, "Ronnie, help me, help me." He said, "There's a spin," because he called spiders spins. So he's spin, help me, help me. I go, he's up on the bed. He stood up on the bed. He's a great big tall bloke. He's had to bend his head over and all. I stood on the bed. He said, "A spin, help me, Ronnie." And he's pointing at the floor, a spin. So I bent down and I picked it up and sort of held it up, and he screamed. What it wasn't a spider, it was the top of the tomato, the top of the tomato that comes off. And he'd been on his bed for an hour, stood on the bed for an hour, frightened of the top bit of the tomato. Anyway, there was this other prisoner in there, was in for murder. He was a guy called Loch Millis, a very strange name, you see, Loch Millis, and what happened was he killed his mother-in-law. A lot of the prisoners got all fair play to him. I'd like to kill my mother-in-law. They're saying that. But then it was discovered, right? What he'd done, he'd gone round the mother-in-law's house. He killed the mother-in-law, and then he was going back every day to her house, and he was eating bits of the mother-in-law. He's eating the mother-in-law. You see, I think our Jamie Oliver's like easy mother-in-law recipe book or something. He's eating the mother-in-law. It's Loch Millis, and I mean Loch Millis. So it sounds like a Scottish holiday.
Yeah, the comedy is taking a bit of a dark slant to it.
Dark slant. This is a very dark slant. The eating of the mother-in-law. Loch Millis sounds like a Scottish holiday resort, isn't it? I suppose you could take your mother-in-law there, couldn't you? Do a bit of self-catering. Yeah, that's it. It sounds like a Scottish Loch Millis. But one thing I used to do there is like we'd eat. In some prisons, you eat your dinner in like a canteen place, but in Long Lartin, you ate the food in your cell. And so I'd take the food back to the cell, and everyone would. And then sometimes, I was on a vegan diet there because there was a system there where if you were a member of the Vegan Society, you had a Vegan Society card, you were entitled to a vegan diet. So I was able to get a vegan diet kind of straight away when I went in there. And but like there'd be times when the other prisoners have chicken, and what you did was when you had your dinner, you put it outside your door, and then someone from the kitchen would come and collect up all the trays and that and take it all back. And so there'd all be these chicken carcasses all lined up. I used to make crosses and put them next to the remains of the chickens, like this road. And the other blokes in there, they used to think it was a bit of a joke, but I kind of think, well, maybe it'll make them think a bit about it, that I was doing that. And of course, there were a lot of kind of serious criminals. I wasn't the most serious. I think Stacey's house was being wrecked there. I wasn't the most serious criminal in there, really. There was all sorts. And anyway, my remember on a visit, we used to go in the visiting room for our visits. And remember, my sister came to see me, and she had my youngest son. He was probably about 8 years old, something like that. You see. And I started talking to my sister, Kyle, his name is, a little lad at the time. And he grabbed hold of my sleeve. He was going, Uncle Ronnie, show me a murderer. He said, I want to see is there a murderer in here? I said, well, probably, yeah. He said, show me a murderer. Who's a murderer? So I kind of looked round very kind of cautiously, see if I could see a murderer. And there was a bloke was in for murder. I said, oh, that bloke there, he's in for murder. That bloke just behind that. And kind of looked at the bloke. It's this kind of very straight-looking bloke with glasses. And the little nephew said, oh, he don't look much like a murderer. What's he in for? I said, oh, he killed his wife. He said, oh, no, show me a real murderer. I want to see. He wanted me to show him like a serial killer. I was looking at what's a serial killer? And then he's going, show me a gangster. And I looked round, all the visit, I was looking round like I'd like to try, see if there was a gangster and make sure the gangster didn't see me looking at it. I was going, oh, he's a gangster over there. And then he's going, show me a bank robber. This whole visit, me having to show him all. He was absolutely fascinated. Absolutely loved it. He was absolutely fascinated by all these criminals.
It sounds like a bit of a dangerous visit, that though, Ronnie.
A bit of a dangerous visit, yeah.
If they saw your finger in them, they'd think something else, wouldn't they?
There was a worse thing than that. There was an even worse thing than that on a visit when my mum and dad come to see me. You see, what happened was we were allowed to have food brought in on visits at Long Lartin, and that stopped years ago because people were putting drugs in the food. But we could actually eat food. You couldn't take it with you, but you could sit there at the table and you could eat food that people brought in. And my mum used to make sosmix pies. I didn't used to have dinner that day because I'm having a sosmix. Mum would bring in a sosmix pie and I'd sit there eat it with a cup of tea, because there was like a kind of like a little tea hatch servery place, and it was run by women from the Women's Royal Voluntary Service. I think they run the little serveries in prison.
I think that was all over the country, wasn't it, Ronnie?
All over the country, yeah. Anyway, my dad is something I've inherited from him. He used to love a cup of tea. He used to if he didn't have a cup of tea, he kind of got withdrawal symptoms, and I'm a bit like that. I could get, if I don't have regular tea, I can be quite nasty, to be quite honest. Like, well, even nastier than I am. Like, I've been really nasty. I've threatened people, all sorts.
Well, I didn't realise that, because do you remember the time? Yeah. Remember the time in Leeds when we couldn't get fair trade tea, so we didn't have tea for about 3 months.
Oh, it's a wonder I survived without killing. I could have been.
Yeah, wonder I didn't get killed then, isn't it?
Yeah, terrible. I've been awful. I mean, Louise has witnessed how nasty I can be for out somewhere. I can't get a cup of tea. Anyway, my dad saves me. So, like, I'd be chatting away to my mum, and all my dad was doing was waiting for this hatch to open of the servery so he could go and get a cup of tea. That was because it used to open about 10 minutes after the visit started, you know, and he was watching this hatch, watching, and he heard it open, and he ran to go to the hatch, and he knocked over this little kid. There's a little kid on his way. He knocked over the little kid, and this little kid, he was a son. There was a great big enforcer bloke, you know, that for a gang, for gangsters, he was like the hitman, you know, the enforcer, this great big bloke, and that was his son. My dad knocked over, oh shit, like, you know, shit, he's knocked over the worst possible bloke in there. My dad sent his son flying. And I looked at the bloke, I was going, oh, sorry, you know, and he said, oh, well, that's all right, kind of thing. I thought, oh, you know, thank God for that, like, I could have been like in serious trouble because of it. And the other thing about visits, now I on a previous one of these, I talked about the bloke who had the visiting trousers. This bloke had visiting trousers that he used to put on for visits, and he didn't wear pants, and there was like a hole in the bum, and he to drugs. But in Long Lartin, I had visiting overalls. You had these visiting overalls, and basically what you'd done, on the visiting overalls, you had your jumper on top or your shirt, overalls, but you didn't have the pants, you see. And the visiting overalls, it was like easy access. If you had a visit, like I had a visit from like a girlfriend at the time in there. I was wearing the visiting overalls. And I think we can probably leave it there, can't we, Roger?
Yeah, I think we should. I think we should.
Let people imagine.
Move on, Ronnie. Move on.
Let people imagine. But I mean, what we can do now, I don't know whether you can tell your stories now.
Oh, thanks, Ronnie.
I'll allow you to come on the stage and
come up on the stage. I remembered it. It's funny. I was in the shower. I have all my best ideas in the shower, and I remembered one thing that happened to me at Weimar, which was a semi-open prison, and I said before that I used to kind of help this guy. He was kind of like one of the guys who kind of run the wing, really. You know, one of the kind of top cons, if you like. I used to help him finish his Sun crossword. He would call me in when he was stuck, and he would kind of go, you know, what, you know, 4 letters, another word for boat, you know, and I'd go ship, and he'd go, yeah, that's it, you know. And so, and then if it was a longer letter, a longer word, I would say, is there any letters already? And he would say, yeah, the second one is H and all that kind of stuff. And so when I would do that one, he would almost like think it was magic or something, which is quite weird. Anyway, one day I said to him that there was a documentary. I can't remember the name of it. A documentary about animal rights or something to do with the movement on Channel 4 or something. And so he goes, oh, I want to see that as well, kind of thing. He didn't really, but he said, I'll meet you in there, kind of thing. So we went down to the TV room, and of course they've always got the soaps on, you know, Coronation Street and all that kind of stuff. And this guy kind of walks in, and he just walked straight up to the TV and turned it over, right? And this documentary came on, and we sat there watching it, whilst all of the other people went, you know, and all that kind of stuff. But they wouldn't dare to turn it over again, no, because he was sat there. And in some ways, I didn't realize I was probably taking a bit of a risk doing that, because they were thinking, oh, the only reason that he's turned it over is because of that vegan guy, you know. So yeah, but it was quite funny, because thinking back, I was thinking, wow, I wouldn't have seen that if it wasn't for the fact that this guy needed his Sun crossword doing.
Yeah,
you know?
Yeah. And we didn't have TV rooms. We didn't have telly in Long Lartin, as far as I know. We had radios, but I can't remember there being TV rooms. I mean, there's TV rooms like in the next prison I was in, and when we do that next Jailhouse Vegans.
Did you have electricity back then? Did you, Ronnie?
I had a pedal all the time to generate that. We didn't have. There was no. Was there? There wasn't any plugs in the cell that you could plug stuff in, as far as I know. You had to have you had a radio, but it had batteries. There was no plug that you could plug anything in. Yeah. You had to have just batteries. Have these batteries sent in for your radio, and it was like that.
It was like that with me, because I was finished by the time. I mean, TVs came in at one point, and also they had to redesign cells and put toilets in. But but there's none of that in my day, because it was all out of the cell type stuff. But there wasn't any TV stuff. There wasn't even any phones at the time. But I suppose you used to make phone calls and that. You know,
but there was a phone in the next prison I was in. There was a phone, and once again, there's funny stories associated with the phone. But that's for the next time to look forward to in the next edition of this never-ending series of Jailhouse Vegans. But there was like, I mean, talking about these guys that like a kind of sort of boss type thing in prison. There was this gang. There was 2 members of this gang of robbers that were in Long Lartin, and what they did was they were stopping security vans in like one of the tunnels under the Thames, like the Blackwell Tunnel.
Oh, Ronnie's frozen. Come back, Ronnie.
This one guy, he owned a scrapyard. So, I'm back. We're all back. The robbers had stopped the security van, and then this guy would come from the scrapyard, and he had this big thing from the scrapyard that was like a massive tin opener, and they just cut the top off the security van with this great big huge tin opener, obviously used for cutting cars up in the scrapyard, you see. And they got done, and they were in there doing about 18 years, and they were like real. Thought they were like the kings of the place, and you could wear your own clothes in there, and you could people could send you clothes in, or you could send away and get stuff out of catalogues, and they all had the latest designer stuff, you know, all really expensive designer clothes, and they go to the gym in all this designer gym wear, and they just used to stand around. They never used to really do anything in the gym. They just used to stand around. Oh, look at me! I've got designer clothes, and like the rest of you have got like shit clothes, you know.
But then you don't want to crease it if you've got designer clothes.
It does either. But they used to make.
You can have a go at this question. It depends on where you are, doesn't it, Ronnie?
Yeah, in Long Lartin, it was just one. Leeds, the previous prison I'd been in, there was 3 of us up to 3 of us in the cell. In Long Lartin, it was just one, and that was great, you know, just to have your own cell. My cell was completely covered in posters and pictures, mostly of animals. I even had posters on the ceiling the whole of it. Other prisoners used to come and look at my cell because it was like a work of art. You know, like people used to send me in cards. I used to stick them all on because we were allowed to do it. They didn't, you know, some prisons they moan, but because it was a long-term prison with people doing long sentences, you were allowed to, you know, to do it. We used to also there was a little kitchen we could make our own food, and I used to, you know, do a little bit of cooking in there. That's in addition
You had to use toothpaste, didn't you, to stick the pictures up?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, to be honest, I think I did use toothpaste to stick stuff up. But it was like completely ended up. I used to have a thing where I'd stick one thing a day on the wall. That was like a routine. I had one thing a day on the wall. So after like a few months after being there, yeah. But it was like people they come but what happened was, these guys were making a big fuss. These big robber guys, because the boss of the gang, a guy called Charlie, was coming to the prison. He was moving to our prison from another prison. They were going, Charlie's coming. We'd have to buy food. And they used to lay out a table in the corridor with all tablecloth. And they had a young lad that used to be like their runner, you know, this young lad that was in for robbery. And they'd send him to the prison shop because in that prison, we were allowed to have money in our hands, you know, coins, which is very unusual. It's normally on paper, you see. And they used to give him the money, and give him a shopping list. And he used to go to the shop once a week and prison shop and buy them all the stuff. They'd make this dinner. We've got to make a lovely dinner. Charlie's coming and all this. This Charlie came. I thought, bloody hell, what's he going to be like? You know. And anyway, this Charlie came. We were on the ground floor and he was on the next floor up, Charlie. And anyway, he said to me, he said that he wanted to see me because I used to do a bit of running there, you see, and he wanted to get into the running. He says, you know, can you come and see me? So I went up to this Charlie cell. I thought, bloody hell, what's this going to be like? Because like in their cells, because you could buy curtains and carpets and bedspreads and stuff, and their cells, these other robbers, that was all done up with all posh stuff, you know, most expensive gear and that. Went in Charlie's cell, and it was just the ordinary prison stuff. He had prison clothes on. He had just the prison stuff. And I looked round, he said to me, I suppose you're wondering why I haven't got the most expensive curtains, why I haven't got designer clothes, and why I haven't got... I said, well, I am, yeah. He said, listen, he said, that's a load of bollocks. He said, that's a load of bollocks. He said, we're in prison. Whatever you do, we're in prison. And he said, and I thought, well, I understand now why he was the leader of the gang, because he was a little bit more intelligent than the other ones. He realised the true situation of it. But you got another story, Roger, haven't you? You said it's another one, isn't there? Is that right?
Oh yeah, that relates to when I was. We talked about the fact that, you know, I was on my toes. You know, I'd kind of ensconced from the court and everything, and so I was spirited away to an organic farm of all places, which was really brilliant because we used to kind of live in these caravans. And we used to kind of like just make these potato and leek soup usually most nights. Ooh, and it was kind of straight out of the ground, straight into the pot. And it was kind of like, it was kind of heaven. And it sounds boring to almost like have the same thing most nights, but it was so good. That's all you wanted. It was great. Mm. And so one day I was working on this farm, and it was one of these ones that were certified organic. It never had any kind of pesticides or anything on that land ever in that particular place. And anyway, I was quite near to the house, and suddenly the door opened, and the guy who ran the farm, he goes, Roger, come over. And I said, yeah, what's the problem? He said, your sentence is on the telly. And so, yeah, so I ran in, and that's the first time I found out that I got 4 years.
Did they have a picture of you on there like this criminal and all that?
I think the report was like this, going, one person who was not there to be sentenced was Roger Yates, because he, and all that kind of stuff, and so I was. It was quite weird. I found out later that I was almost forgotten about, and so it came to the end of the trial. You might remember this, but I wasn't there. And
no,
yeah. Came to the end of the trial, and apparently they'd forgotten to sentence me, and the judge was just about to bring the trial to an end when somebody said, hang on a minute, you haven't sentenced Yates, right? And then
that was me. That was me that said that.
Was it? Yeah, it might have been, yeah. and so, but apparently legally, if they'd have actually closed the court down without sentencing me, they wouldn't have been able to do it then. It'd be like a double jeopardy
so
thing.
You nearly escaped.
So almost got away with it. So
what a shame.
Anybody out there going on the run might pay off.
It can pay off, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Anyway, shall we have a look at some of the?
We should. Yeah, we're on half past. We're on half past.
Yeah.
So let me. Right. Stacey, you've muted yourself, and I can't unmute you.
There you go.
Yeah. How you doing?
I'm all right.
So welcome back. I hope you're enjoying Ronnie's ridiculous stories.
Yeah, all right.
Still awake.
So who's your companion there, Stacey?
The two that were started play fighting, that was Amber and Simba. I've put them outside, and I've got Leo in here now.
Oh, right. Okay.
Leo.
And I can't remember how many other animals you said you had there now, but
about 200 to 250 thereabouts.
Yeah, fluctuates. I suppose goes up and down. So we've got two things on the cards. I'm going to show a PowerPoint. We'll zip through that, and then we've got a little series of little films that you sent, which has got what I keep calling a weird ending. So we'll leave that just for that. But so here we go with this one. So right. So if you want to give us a commentary, Stacey, off you go.
Okay, so that's the guinea pig enclosure, and there's about 30 guinea pigs in there, boys and girls, all neutered boys and females. Lots of them have come as single guinea pigs. And quite often guinea pigs will come from homes where they'll think that they don't get on with others, but they like to live in a big group. So they're a very happy herd of guinea pigs, and they're absolutely adorable. But their enclosure is about 20 foot long, so they've got plenty of space, lots of levels to climb up and down on. Plus they've got a summer house if they want to be indoors as well.
Yeah, and are there some individuals who don't like to be in the group, or does it tend to be that because it's such a kind of natural situation that they all kind of seem to get on?
I think the problem that people find really with guinea pigs is when they've got boys, they will fight because they're usually kept in cages or hutches, whereas when they've got lots of space and lots of other guinea pigs,
and get away from each other.
Yeah, and also if there's a boy guinea pig in there with another 15 boys, it's not like he's going to fight all of them. A bit like you two in jail. So they avoid any of the ones that don't get on with, and they just stay at different ends. So
now here's a thing we need to address. Try to donate, but I haven't got PayPal. Is there an alternative?
On the Facebook page, there's bank details on there if anybody wants to donate directly to a bank account.
Okay, so Garden Sanctuary. Is there only one Garden Sanctuary on Facebook, as far as you know?
I think there's two, but you can see the difference because mine's got a picture of a turkey and a bunny rabbit on there for the logo. So if anyone goes on there, they'll see that it's for animals. And I think the other ones, you found it, didn't you, Ronnie? Wasn't it a massage centre or something?
Yeah.
Oh, wait, we're doing nothing for massage centres, Ronnie?
Yeah, that's it. Well, I have to.
Well,
I'll get very stiff. I'll get very stiff these days, Rog.
We'll leave that in abeyance. So thanks to Linda for asking the question.
Yeah, thank you, Linda.
We better move on again.
But let me remind people to donate whatever way you want to do it. That's the PayPal address going across the bottom. Don't forget to put the one on the end, otherwise I think the massage centre will have your money. So it's the Garden Sanctuary 1, and I think the actual Facebook address is facebook.com/the Garden Sanctuary 1, isn't it, as well? I think that's also the Facebook address.
Yeah,
if
is.
I'm right. So remember the one is very important. That's good. That's smashing. And please give lots of money, all these animals there that has been so well looked after. It's a brilliant cause to donate to.
So these pictures, we went to a hoarder's house, and there was 2 cockatiels. There were 2 cockatiels in there, a budgie, and there was a mummified lovebird that was in the bottom. Maybe the picture might be on here as well. But that was in the home that we took them from. And I took from that house, there was 2 cockatiel, a budgie, 2 cockatoos, but the house had 37 cats in there that were alive, 1 that was dead. A emaciated Staffordshire Bull Terrier, but the cats went to brilliant other rescues like the Animal House team, Wonky Pet Rescue, Ravens Rescue, Stray Cat Team Rescue. The cats went up to all those, and I took the birds. But those birds were from that house. But there's going to be other pictures to show the state that they're in. It was
do you get called in there by the police and that because they don't know what to do? Is that what happens?
I was contacted by Rainbow Rescue to come and get the birds, but I think it was either social services or the police who had contacted Rainbow when they entered the property because the lady had died and left all these neglected animals behind.
Oh, wow. Now, here's a story.
Well, this chicken, she was dumped on another rescue, and then they sent her to me because I've got more one-to-one time with them. And obviously you can see that leg's been, she was left like that for a long time, but it would have started off as like scaly mite, maybe an infection. Wouldn't have been that hard to treat, but because she'd been left and neglected, my vet tried to save that leg, but it was impossible. So she had her leg removed, and she does really well with 1 leg. She gets around really well. So her name's Daisy, and she's a lot happier now. She's had that leg taken off.
So that's the actual skin of the leg you can see there, all that white and everything.
Yeah, and it was all infected. Like it's like hard, crusty skin at the very back of where the foot is. But there was no saving it. It had just been left too long. But she was in absolute chronic pain with that leg. It was horrendous. And it was so heavy as well. But it took a bit of time for her to get used to it, obviously, because that had been so heavy. She'd had to rebalance herself without that leg. But once it was gone, that was it. She was pain-free then and living really happily.
And they can get around, can they? Just one-legged, yeah?
Yeah. So that picture's from that hoarder's house, and that's one of the dead cats.
Oops,
that's
sorry, I'll go back. I forgot to stop it. Sorry.
Yeah, that was she was behind a mattress in this terrible room, but there was nothing left of her body. It was just fur. Her body had just liquefied because she'd been left there that long. Just to show what a state this place was where we went in to get these animals, because most of the time when you go in and rescue animals, this is the type of things that you have to see.
Yeah. I mean, to be honest, when you sent me that picture, I didn't even know which way up it was supposed to be, so I just guessed. So,
yeah. I'm not sure, Deb, about the bumblefoot because it was like she had scaly mite, definitely. It looks like there was infection, that the infection just left to rot the foot away. That's all from this same house. That there was lots of cats locked in that room, and you can see where they'd all been clawing up the walls.
Yeah, blimey, that's so that's the same house, yeah.
Yeah, well, that mattress you can see there, that's where that dead cat was behind.
Oh, blimey,
it's awful.
I bet the smell was pretty rough.
Yeah, it was horrendous. It was really, really bad. But in the back garden, there was a beautiful cattery, and I think maybe the lady started out with the best intentions, but taken on too much, and obviously with ill health, because obviously she passed away, the animals had ended up being neglected.
Yeah, probably one of the things that she gets known in the area, and people then start dumping individuals on them and guilt tripping them, and that's why you end up all overcrowded and everything. Happens to some sanctuaries sometimes, doesn't it? So
of course it does. That's why you have to be conscious of how much you can take care of and how many you can take on. But also it's good to have links with other rescues to be able to share the load. So this is the before and after of one of the guinea pigs that had came. He's a classic example of boys who have been left together and fought in a little cage. And the lady that had him before me, she'd put something that dogs have for the skin in his eye. So his eye had gone really sore. But that was only about 3 to 4 weeks later, and he'd completely healed, and he's a lot happier now, been neutered and lives in with a big group.
Very good.
So this is from the hoarder's house as well. That's Caesar. That's the cage that he was in originally, and that's him on the right-hand side with me. And he's about 6 years old. I don't think she would have let him out in that house because of all the cats. But he's a real love bug. He's such a beautiful, lovely cockatoo. He's so friendly and happy, and you can see even the colours of his feathers. He's so much better now.
No, this is a story and a half.
Yeah, that's the squirrel again that we spoke about the other day. That a lady contacted my page because she's been feeding him, because he's a wild squirrel. She's been feeding him, but noticed that he couldn't eat properly. So we trapped him, got him to my vet's, and we've had his teeth cut down twice now. But last time they were cut down, they've been cut down right into the back of his jaw to let him have longer in the wild. He's a really old squirrel, but he definitely needed help because he would have starved to death, because that bottom tooth that you can see on the right was actually embedded into the top of his mouth, so infection would have set in. It would have been horrendous if it had not been helped.
That's pretty nasty, isn't it? So these are the ones that we showed the other day, aren't they? So we'll just go through these last few pretty quick then,
Okay.
and then get on to the...
Yeah, that's Mango. He came from being locked in a cage for most of his life. He's 24 when he came, and he's been with me 2 years, and that's him in his ivory. Really happy, lovely boy.
24. What's their natural lifespan, do you know?
Well, about 70 years they can live to, so they live a long time.
Oh, wow.
26 now because he's been with me 2 years.
Yeah.
That's Bronson, who was a free to good home piglet. So a friend of mine picked him up, brought him to me, and he's gone on to New Hope Sanctuary now because I haven't got the space for fully grown pigs, sadly.
I think this might be the last one coming up, I think.
It's great you're able to take them in to start with, though, isn't it, Stacey? It's like
lovely for me as well.
Yeah.
This is the scene from Christmas Day when I've got Noodles and Bronson in the living room, and we all had a lovely Christmas day together, but Noodles spent most of his time in the house anyway. And Bronson, Noodles, all my dogs, they all got on really well with each other. It's so lovely to see the way that piglets actually interact with dogs. They're just exactly the same. Amazing little creatures.
Right, okay, I'm just going to swap over, if I can.
That's great. So so we're waiting for something to come up here, are we, Roger?
Yeah, I hope so. There we go. All right, there we go. So some of this is going to be. Oh, we decided we'd do this on full screen because some of this is going to be small.
Yeah.
So
yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll just let that run on really because I think it's just on the transition. I think.
Okay.
Yeah. We're having a bit of a glitchy time with this. Let me do it on this this machine here.
So while you're doing that, let me remind people: please give generously to the Garden Sanctuary. There's the PayPal address at the bottom of the screen. It's also in the description of the YouTube description of this. And if you can't do PayPal, if you go to the Facebook page, there's bank details on there where you can make a donation. And the last Jailhouse Vegans we did, which was for Huglit's Wood Farm Animal Sanctuary. Wenda, who runs the sanctuary, would like to thank everyone for their kind donations because we raised £745 for them, and she's delighted about that. And we've kind of raised between every one of these, we've raised between £500 and £1,000 for the particular sanctuary. So let's hope we can do the same, if not better, for the Garden Sanctuary. Indeed.
So chickens then, Stacey.
Yeah, I've got lots of chickens. The birds that were on before, the three parakeets, they all came as singletons, and when birds come on their own and then have their own kind with them, they change so much. They're so much happier, and those three have got like a little three-way relationship. It's really, really, really cute. But yeah, I've got lots of chickens, and in this particular video, they're eating the leftover bits of the hanging baskets, which I thoroughly enjoy. Which you can see I've got no grass, it's just all mud at the minute because of the weather. But yeah, they're absolutely wonderful, wonderful, wonderful creatures, chicken bar. Everybody should adopt some chickens. And this is one of the mixed ivories, and also a lot of these birds have come as singletons. Those cockatiels that were from the hoarder's house, they went into this ivory. This is only a small part of it, it's quite large, that ivories, and there's about maybe 50 birds in there, budgies, cockatiels, little parakeets. They all get on really well, and they're all happy because they can all fly. They can see the sunrise every morning and set, and they can feel the breeze. In there, on this particular video, they've got some willow tree in there because they love to pull at the willow, makes it more of a natural environment for them. This is my little chipmunk Speedy, and he came from another rescue when the lady had died as well, and she'd also become overwhelmed with animals. And he was living in a little bird cage, so now he's in an 8-foot aviary, and he's still cage paces up and down at the front, even though he's been here for a few years. But he's got a lot more stimulation in there than he had in his previous place, and that's what I like to do for all of them. Just give them more in life than what they've had before they came. He's got cat traps.
And is he speedy? Is he? He's speedy.
Yeah, his full name is Speedy Lot. Yeah, he likes to have a little bite of your fingers if you're not careful.
You're arming yourself with a biscuit there. So we've got the guinea pigs again.
Yeah, the guinea pigs again. This one that's at the front, this tri-coloured girl, she's the eldest. She's about 8 years old now. She's doing really well. She's lovely. She's the only one that actually likes to have a fuss. The rest of them just want to be left alone. But yeah, she's a bit of a love bug. She's beautiful.
I think this video gives a bit of an indication of the size of the place as well, which is good.
Yes, great, isn't it?
Now there's a story here.
So this little goldfish was my friend's mum's, and she'd had her for a few months. She had swim bladders. She was on her back at the bottom of the tank, and they tried to help her but failed. So she asked me if I could take her on along with the other tank members. So they came to mine. I tried to treat a swim bladder with all the treatments you can get and the different methods with peas. Nothing was working. She was just upside down on her back. So I built her that little life jacket with a float on. So she had a bit more quality of life. And she'd been in newspapers and all over the internet and shared everywhere. I've had lots of people message me about making those little life jackets for their fish who also suffering the same problem. But you can't make one to fit all fish. It has to be made for the specific fish that it's for. And you have to be careful because they've obviously got a slime coat, so you don't want it to rub on them anywhere. But this was about 18 months ago, and she lived for about 6 months with that on, and I had to alter the float so she was in different parts of the tank. But she was happy as anything, gave her massive quality of life, because people need to realise that fish also deserve the same love and respect and care as every other creature that's on this earth. Just because they're a fish in a tank doesn't mean that they don't deserve happiness and care. So yeah, she lived in that for 6 months and was doing really well. Really sad to lose her.
If you go on YouTube, there's loads of videos of these now. So there's a real trend for these life jackets now, aren't there? So.
Yeah, it's fabulous. It's really good. It shows people just to put a bit of care and thought and love for them to completely change their lives. For that little tiny bit of effort, for the quality of life is amazing.
And 6 months for them is really quite a long time, isn't it? Compared with their lifestyle. How long can they live, Stacey? Maybe 10 years max, is it?
I think fancy goldfish, I'm not sure if it's as long, because obviously they've been genetically bred to have this weird shaped body, which is why they suffer with these problems. It's like what we've done to them. But as you both know, and like everybody who's watching knows, animals live in the moment. So even if their last part of their life, as long as it's happy, that's what's really important, that we do that for them.
Absolutely.
But one thing we should say, that this myth about the 3 seconds, it's not even true. It's been proved to be scientifically wrong, all that stuff about 3 second memory.
Yeah, fish are highly aware. Intelligent animals, so that they're just not given the recognition that they deserve. But it's easy for people to think that they are stupid, so they can fish and eat them and everything else that they suffer. But they are really clever, wonderful creatures.
Yeah.
So these two, Sheba, who's at the front, he came as a singleton. I think he was a stray because he came from another rescue. Both of them absolutely love human interaction, which is important to do for parrots who have come from homes where they've been fussed. And there's Caesar at the back, who was from the hoarder's house. And as you can see, that they love to fuss each other, because birds need the company of other birds as well. And keeping parrots on their own is really cruel, because they need that interaction with their own species. So this is what I try to do for them, to bond them and let them have friends with each other. Yeah, that's dead right, that is, Terry, that even if they were stupid, nobody should eat them all.
I'm moving to the last one, the one that I keep calling weird, because I was really struck when I saw this.
So this is Sheba and Caesar again, and this is them making sure that I'm all looking nice as well. So they like to sit on my lap, and they like to mess with my hair and my eyelashes because of having that human interaction. It's like family bonding for them. So
they wouldn't have a lot of joy with me, would they? Really?
I know, but Roger, if you want to doing, just come round.
No, nobody has a lot of joy with you, Ronnie.
So they say. Especially not you, Rog. Unfortunately. No. but you haven't got me for all that much longer on there. Officially we've got 10 minutes left, but that was absolutely wonderful seeing those animals. So let me remind you again, please donate to this wonderful sanctuary. There's the PayPal address going across the bottom, or if you go on to the Facebook page, there's bank details. And, please give generous detail per Stacey. It's not cheap. Running sanctuaries, it's even more difficult at the moment with COVID and fundraising activities being restricted. So sanctuaries are, relying a lot more on people to make donations. So please be generous to the garden sanctuary.
Thank you for everyone who's donated.
Yes, absolutely wonderful. Please, keep the money coming. Keep the money coming, and tell other people to do the same. It's an absolutely brilliant place. So anyway, I better tell a few more funny stories.
Yeah, your mission, should you accept it, Ronnie, is to be funny for 9 minutes. Go on.
It's funny to try and be funny anyway. Yeah, well, I'm going to go back now to like before I was in prison, because there's funny stories like leading up to the prison that related to kind of my activities for animal liberation and stuff like that. And I was in Hunt Saboteurs for many years. So that's how I kind of started off as an activist. But then I became towards the late 70s. I became a press officer for the ALF, and that was really busy, and I kind of pretty much spent all my time doing that. And so I kind of less time for the sabbing, but I kind of now and again I was still able to help with a bit of advice, because there was a chap, I remember, we were sat around like our little local some Hunt Sabs group, and there was this guy who was in the group, and he worked he worked behind the bar in a pub, and he was really upset. He said it's awful. He said the hunter are going to meet at the pub where I work. He said it's terrible. I'm really gutted about it. He said I don't know what to do. He said I feel like having a go at the pub manager and walking out. He said, but I need the job. I really need this job. And so he said, I don't know what to do. And I gave him a bit of advice. I said, what you want to do is get some liquid laxative. I found out about some liquid laxative. I said, get some liquid laxative. I said, because you'll be doing the stirrup cups, won't you? So that you give them all stirrup cups. And he said, oh, yeah, I've got to do that. He said, I really don't want to do it. I was going to refuse. I said, oh, no, don't refuse. Volunteer, you do it.
Ronnie, do you want to say what a stirrup cup is in case people don't know?
Oh, a stirrup cup. What it is, when these hunt meet at the pub, before they go out to kill the foxes, they all have a little drink. They have like a little glass with brandy or whatever in this glass to have a little drink to kind of give them the strength to like go and do their appalling behaviour. You see, so they all sat round and they drink it. They're sitting on the horses. Someone comes round to the pub with a tray and they hand them, there you are, master, there we are, stirrup cup, and then they drink, thank you very much, and they drink it and that. So he had to do that. Anyway, what he'd done was he put liquid laxative in all these stirrup cups, like. All the hunt got called off. They were within minutes. They all shat themselves. They were shitting on top. He said there's one you can see the shit, like he was sat on the horse. You see the shit running down his leg, like on his boot and that. And they all got cancelled. It was fucking brilliant, absolutely brilliant, And they never didn't suspect him. They thought, there was probably some bug went round them all, and they.
The subs used to make that joke. The subs used to make the joke, don't they? That that horse has got two arseholes, one under the tail and one sat on his back. So that was really amplified on that one, wasn't it? So.
But their arseholes were certainly working that day overtime. So wonderful. I mean, it's a shame. It'd be great if there was someone at every pub where they meet. It'd be great if there was someone there like to do that. That'd be a lot less hunting going on. And a lot more money for the dry cleaners as well, probably. But anyway, what I want to talk about, I had in the sort of late 70s, early 80s. I lived with a woman called Kim, and we lived in sort of North London area, a few different addresses, and there's some very funny stories related to Kim, my relationship with her. And the first one sort of really relates to the time when I came closest to being killed. Was like, I think it was probably it would be the late 70s. There was a day when I came the closest to being killed, and where it was at a jumble sale. I came closest to being killed at a jumble sale, because what happened was I went to meet up with Kim, and she said, don't come to the house because there's a jumble sale in the town centre, where she lived, and I want to go to the jumble sale, so I'll meet you outside the jumble sale and we'll go in the jumble sale. So all right, anyway, I got there early because I got a train over. I got there early. I was in the queue, so I go in the queue. I was like right at the front of the queue for the jumble sale. Anyway, they opened the doors, and I thought, I might as well go in. She's not here. I might as well go in and have a look round. So anyway, I kind of went in there, and there's a big queue of crowd coming in after me. Like, there's all these women with bags and all that. And down the end of the hall, it was like some church hall. Down the end of the hall, it was all closed. I wasn't really interested in that. There was these books. I noticed this table. There was all clothes on the top of the table. Underneath the table was books. I thought, that's interesting. Books. They're interested in books. So I went to this table. I bent down. I was like sort of bent double, rummaging under the books, right? And suddenly, like, all these big women all came after the clothes, and they were all going mad, grabbing the clothes and all that. Anyway, I got crushed. I got crushed against this table. I was bent double, being crushed by these women like that. And I thought I was going to die. Like, all the air would come out my lungs. I thought, I'm going to die. I started passing out. Oh my God, I'm going to die at a jumble sale. Think of the headlines of that.
You're anyway, great at a football match. But jumble sales can be really hectic, because we used to do because I was part of Sea Shepherd in the early days, Sea Shepherd Europe, with Dave McCall, and we used to do these. What we used to do is go around the kind of affluent areas and put something through saying we'll come back tomorrow. So if you want to donate to this group, put it outside in a bin bag. We used to get all kinds of stuff, and then we'd do the jumble sale. But when you open the door, there was a massive kind of crush.
Oh, they're lunatics. And anyway, so in the end, I elbowed, like, I really viciously elbowed these women, like really going mad, and I managed to like get to the floor and kind of crawl. I was crawling between their legs. Never noticed me. They're going mad, like fighting each other, like grabbing the clothes, like trying to knock the person down. I'll give you a penny for it, and whatever, going mad. And I thought, well, if I died, they'd have probably said, oh, there's a dummy down here with your clothes on, right? And they'd have had me trousers, everything, trousers, pants. They'd have probably thought, this is a very realistic mannequin.
Probably saying that, were you just walking around?
I'd have been found naked, dead and naked under the table. They'd have bought all the stuff, But there was another funny. There was a group in North London that had a jumble sale, an animal rights group. And it was funny because this woman, it was in South Hertfordshire, and the woman who who started the group, she was really pleased she'd started this group. She phoned me up and said, I've started an animal rights group, local animal rights group. I said, oh, brilliant. I said, what's the group called? She said, it's called South Herts Animal Group. South Herts Animal Group. Well, I thought for a minute. I said, have you thought what those initials? Have you thought what the initials are of that? What the initials are? South Herts Animal Group. They had a jumble sale in the church hall, right? And they ended up selling the vicar's curtains and the vicar's. Someone had the curtains down, bought the curtains, and they sold the vicar's piano cover. Someone had the cover on. They had to kind of try and get it back, go round, try and find the Vicar was going mad. But but Kim, I was saying about Kim, I live with. Now, anyone who knows me knows how much I hate the Tories. Now, Kim was, to compare with Kim, I was nothing. Her hatred for the Tories knew no bounds whatsoever. You see, and we were living together in a place called New Southgate. This is North London, and her parents lived like in over northwest London. It was a place called Harrow Weald, and there was a lot of, really quite posh houses over there. And we used to go on the train to see. I used to dread it. At election time, because we get off the train and we had to walk for about a mile to get to their house. And of course, they're all like affluent people. Every time she saw a poster, a Tory poster in the window of someone's house, she'd stand outside the house shouting, "You fucking Tory fucking bastards," at the top of her voice. Like, I thought, I'm going to have to fight one of these Tories. They can come out. But I mean, probably they were too frightened. They're probably hiding in the cupboard somewhere till she went away. And we used to take ages, because every house she'd stop at and she'd shout at the house. And we used to take ages to get to her mum and dad's. And then one time, see Louis behind me there. There's Louis. Louis has a nibble as well. I've got to watch him. And one time she was like at home at her parents', and this bloke came round election time, showed at the door. "What do you want?" He says, "I'm canvassing on behalf of the Conservative Party." He had a load of leaflets, Tory leaflets. She grabbed the leaflets out of his hand and she ran up the road, just throwing them, chucking them in people's gardens and throwing them around, like, And she always wanted to, up from a bit later when I lived somewhere else in North London, there was a Conservative club, quite nearby. And she was always wanting, we'd go to like, there was an Italian restaurant there we used to go to, and like, there was a few vegan things there, and I used to have some stuff. But she just used to have a bottle of wine. Says, "I don't really want food." I'll drink a bottle of wine. She'd be quite pissed up. Coming home, she always wanted to. She always used to want to burn down a Conservative club. She'd get her lighter out. I said, "What are you doing?" She said, "I'm going to burn down the Conservative club." I said, "No, you're not." And I'd been struggling with at the side of the road. She'd go, "You never let me do what I want to do." I said, "Well, you can't do that. You'll be done and all that." And I said, "Anyway, there's people in there, they're in there." And she says, "Well, that's all the better, if they're in there." I used to have to stop her. But she was great, because she had blonde hair, and she'd always have blokes going, "Oh, hello, blondie," and all stuff like that. She hated it. And one day, these three blokes were walking towards her, like, and the one in the middle started going, "Hello, blondie." She had an umbrella. She hit him straight up between the legs with her umbrella. Smashed up 20 legs, he went down. And there was a bloke on a motorbike in London, like, it was like slow moving traffic, and he shouted at her, and she went in the road, pushed him over, and he fell over, and his bike fell on his bike fell on top of him. But so she was quite. She was really quite feisty. Another time, this is when we lived somewhere else. There was like the house down the road. Where there were builders. They were doing up this house down the road. It was an empty house, and a builder bought it, doing it up and all. And there was builder, and they, what they do? They shout at women, don't they? "Oh, darling," and all that. Anyway, she came in fuming. "Oh, they shouted at me, those bastards." And said, "Anyway, I got the number of the company." And she phoned up the company, and she said, "These blokes just shouted at me and all that." She said, "Unless you stop them," he said, "if they do it again," she said, "I'm going to burn that house down." So I'll burn the house down, see, unless you stop these blokes shouting at me. So like, she was like, I quite admired her really for that. It was great.
Funny you should say that, Ronnie, because I was out in the van yesterday, and there was they started building again in Ireland, and there was 3 or 4 of these builders hanging over a kind of wall, gawping at the women going by, the way they do. And I was thinking, I bet the women have really bloody missed that during the lockdown,
Oh, I know. Yeah, it's terrible, but she wouldn't have it. Anything like that, she just wouldn't have it. She'd just go straight for them, It's great, you know.
Well, it's 5 past, Ronnie. You know, you said about the South Herts Animal Group. I wonder if they used to do a South Herts annual theatre as well.
Yeah. They possibly did. Yeah, that would be a good name as well. Yeah. Well, South Arts International Theatre. I know. It was quite. I think she changed the name. She just didn't realise that that's what it spelled. You know. That's quite amusing. But anyway, so that's kind of that's the end of today. I suppose we kind of can't keep people hanging about too long, can we? But there's going to be another one of these because there's more stuff left. I think we've probably got time for one more. I've got another prison that I went to after Long Lartin, and there's quite a few funny stories associated with that. So
they're probably building a new one for you, Ronnie, I would think.
Yeah, like a really top high security one somewhere. Yeah. I mean, I'll have to do more. I want to, to carry on the series.
I want to thank you for tuning in. Stacey, thanks for giving us all those wonderful stories and sending those films along, because they were really great, and people in the chat really appreciated them. So thanks very much for that.
You're welcome, and thank you for helping me raise some funds.
Yeah, well, and don't forget, people, we're doing this for a good cause. Otherwise, Ronnie wouldn't do it. He won't just talk for nothing. So.
Well, I have been known to talk for nothing, but there we are. But not this time. I'm not talking for nothing this time. You've got to pay me.
You have to pay to shut up, don't you, Ronnie? That's what it is.
Yeah, you've got to pay the sanctuary. See, otherwise I'm never going to go away.
Yeah.
But please be generous. You've seen what a wonderful place is, and that's only a small number of the animals that are there, and brilliant place. Please give generously to the Garden Sanctuary, and let's hope they make a lot of money and are able to carry on their great work. Smashing.
Thank you, Karen.
It is. But you deserve it, Stacey. It's great stuff, because Stacey campaigns for veganism as well. When she can, does a bit of outreach, don't you, Stacey? So it's it's all the time. It's absolutely brilliant. All right then, folks. Well, there will be another one of these. You'll be very, very pleased to know. None of you will have any money left, will you? All these. It's great, but there's, it's a great thing to give you money too, isn't it? So look out for the next one of these. It'll probably be in 3 or 4 weeks, and we'll let you know what sanctuary we're doing that one too. So thanks everyone for tuning in, and thanks for all those who've already made a donation, and for those who will be making a donation very soon to the Garden Sanctuary. Imagine.
Rock on, people.
Take care, folks. See you soon.
See you again.
Bye.
Bye for now.
Bye.